Hello and welcome to our February 2019 Landlord and Real Estate Investor Q&A presentation. I'm Jim Clark and I'm an attorney. I represent landlords and active real estate investors. We took the last couple months of 2018 off to tend to year-end matters and all of its craziness, the holidays, which for me is all about making the most of time with the family. But here we are, middle of winter. About 6 degrees outside at the time of this recording. So while Mother Nature does her thing out there, we're back with another round of Q&A in here. Just a few quick announcements before we get started. We've had a pretty decent response to a series of instructional videos we have relating to assignments in wholesaling in New York. And I've been getting requests for similar instructional type presentations on the same and other topics. So in the coming months, we'll be posting some similar presentations on topics such as entity selection, asset protection, and a residential landlord series that we're working on. In addition to that, we're going to try to do some presentations with some guests and pull some people from my network onto the channel so you can all hopefully benefit from what they have to offer. And toward that end, we'll probably start with some private lenders because my clients are constantly asking me for financial resources, and this could be a great way to introduce these folks with the money to help you get your deals done. So if you haven't already, I'd highly recommend that you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified as we start to roll this stuff out. Before we get started, I just need to mention that the material provided in this presentation is informational only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. You should contact your attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular issue or problem. The use of and viewing of this presentation or any of the links contained don't create an attorney-client relationship. The opinions expressed in this presentation are my own, but may not reflect the opinions of my firm or any individual attorney in my practice. Portions of this presentation may contain attorney advertising under the rules of some states, so prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. All that being said, if you need an attorney or think you might need an attorney, by all means feel free to reach out to us. Our offices are in New York and we're licensed to practice in New York, but we work with investors from all over the U.S. And if we cannot help you, then we're happy to point you in the right direction. You can find us on the web at www.clarkslaws.com, or you can reach us using the contact information that you'll see throughout this presentation. So give us a call. I love the business, I love speaking with investors, and I'm here in service to you guys. So by all means, hit me up. This presentation is free to you, but of course I encourage you to support it by subscribing and liking it so that we can keep doing what we do. In the course of a month, I interact with so many landlords and investors, and what I find is that the same questions come up over and over again. So I've been putting these short Q&A presentations together as a way of reaching more people who could benefit from the information. If, as you're rolling along, you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please get them to me using the contact information below or through my website at www.clarkslaws.com, and I'd be happy to consider it for future Q&A presentations. I've been keeping these presentations to about 15 minutes, and I'll continue to try to do that. It's a short period of time to convey an awful lot of information, so of course this isn't going to be as detailed as I would like, but as I mentioned, feel free to give us a call, and we'd be happy to expand on any of this. So now with all that out of the way, and without further ado, I'll now run through our February 2019 Landlord and Real Estate Investor Q&A. First question we have here is from Zach. I'm just getting started as an investor. I've been in business doing middle market sales in my own office supply company for 20 years, which I sold last year. I still work in that company as a salesperson. I'm not quite ready to retire, so I want to get into flipping houses next, primarily because it seems like a great way to make money, which I really need to pay off some lingering debts. What do you think is the best way for me to get started? Well, it's a good question. I get this all the time, how to get started as a residential flipper. What I always like to do is kind of get more information about the background, where you're coming from, what natural skills you have. And, as Zach mentioned in his question here, he's got some great experience in sales, and not just any sales, but sales with middle market businesses. To me, this sounds like the path of least resistance might be to get into something to leverage his existing portfolio of contacts. So what I would recommend is, unless there's some other reason for getting into the house flipping business, which it can be a good way to make money, that will most likely involve setting up a whole new network, a lot of effort, a lot of time. And if you're in it for the money, if you're looking to pay off some debts, you might want to go an easier way. For someone in this situation, with a lot of experience in business, probably a good list of contacts, I'd consider even becoming a commercial real estate broker, because all those businesses that you've dealt with over this time, they're going to have real estate needs. They probably have leased space, or they own the buildings that they're in, and they may be selling or leasing in the future, and can make a pretty good amount of money, probably as much or more than a starting out real estate residential flipper as a commercial broker. So just something to consider. Otherwise, if you're looking to get into flipping houses, you're going to have to learn the business. I'd recommend getting a good coach that can teach you the financial end of this, and just start going around looking at properties, start making offers, and see what comes of it. Next question's from John, another getting started question. He says, I'm just getting started as an investor. I have been in commercial construction for 30 years, and I want to start flipping houses. I intend to maintain my construction company, but I want to expand into investing. What do you think is the best way for me to get started? So another question, similar line. The thing here, with John, you have a different background. You are in the construction industry. You could probably get into the redevelopment of houses very easily, and so you're already kind of ahead of the game. So getting started as a house flipper, probably a good way to keep your crews busy, and to leverage on some slack time and everything else. I know a lot of contractors that get into the business, they tend to do well. So I would focus on that. You're going to be looking for the most rundown houses you can find, because you're going to be able to spin them into something nice. The areas where you're going to want to improve upon and probably get more help with is in the financial analysis end, because if you have experience with the building, you're going to know what it costs. But what you're not going to know is the market, what these things are going to sell for after it's done, what's a good price to buy at. And you don't mention anything about your financial backing, but I'll assume that if you've been in commercial construction for 30 years and you want to maintain it, that you're probably doing okay. So finances might not be an issue, but if they are, I would just start networking also with some private lenders. And then from there, you really just got to go out and start finding deals. And the quickest way to do that is I would start by just looking at MLS. Everybody investors often look down on MLS because it's such a widespread thing, but you're going to be able to look at properties that are far more run down than other investors would even consider. So it might be a good place to start. That, and also real estate agents, and see what comes of it. But sounds like you're otherwise well set up to get started. Next question's from Chris. I'm starting to make offers on properties, and I'm finding that many sellers do not have attorneys. Would you be willing to represent both me and the seller? If not, can you recommend another attorney to represent the seller, preferably someone who will make the transaction go smoothly and not give us too much of a hard time? Well, I get this question a lot, because it seems like an easy way to go. And a lot of times these sellers don't have attorneys. They don't deal with attorneys because attorneys tend to be a little on the expensive side. So, and a lot of times these sellers don't want to pay for an attorney either. So it seems like a nice solution to just have your lawyer represent both sides and get the deal done. I really couldn't do a situation like that. I consider it a conflict of interest, because your interests as the buyer are going to be starkly different from that of the seller. The seller is entitled to their own counsel so that they know that they're getting a fair deal, just as you're entitled to your own. if I were to represent both sides, and I do that in some cases where we're representing both sides of the transaction, say a buyer and a lender, something along those lines. It's all fully disclosed though, and I can't keep any secrets. The benefit of having an attorney is that certain confidences that you have stay confidential. And once you have two parties being represented who might have divergent interests, you've lost that ability to have confidentiality. You've lost that ability to have loyalty, undivided loyalty to you, because now the loyalties are split among the two parties. So it really doesn't serve either one of you. You need an attorney to look out for you, especially in New York, because everybody else has an attorney and everybody else is looking out for themselves. And especially you're going to want someone that has some experience so they can guide you through the process, because you can get burned. As far as the seller goes, if you have a situation where you put another attorney in place that's going to be friendly to you and might not have the best interests of the seller in mind, that's also a recipe for disaster, I think, because if the deal goes bad or if the seller has some remorse after the fact, they're going to say that the system was rigged against them because you used your attorney. You forced them to use their attorney. And it could create problems for you down the road that really just are not worth it. Yeah, it can be inconvenience to have an attorney on the other side that's hustling you, but if you've got the right attorney on your side, then that shouldn't be an issue. I know for us, we deal with all kinds of attorneys. We got great relationships with them. Everybody's trying to get these deals done, but at the same time, everybody's trying to keep their clients safe. You don't want to be in a situation where you're in an unsafe position or the seller's in an unsafe position, because usually then it's going to end up in some sort of litigation, which could take you off the rails. So what I would say is if your sellers don't have an attorney, I'd go around, I'd get a list of attorneys. I'd say about 5 or so attorneys in the locality where that seller lives, and I'd give them a list and say, you go find your own attorney, but if you need help finding one, feel free to talk to any of these 5. And then that way they're making a choice, and then that way they're well protected. They feel like they're well protected, and they're not going to come and blame you for rigging the system on you later on. Next question. This one's from Lisa. I have a large piece of land, approximately 3 acres, that borders a busy road on one side and a residential neighborhood on the other. There's a house on a small corner of the land that I currently have rented. I want to sell the property, but was thinking about first getting zoning approval to build a commercial building on the land so I can get more money for it. Do you think this is a good idea? Well, these kind of questions are always market dependent. It might be a good idea. What I've seen in my locality, which is basically the New York metropolitan area, is that a lot of the people who are going to pay top dollar for it are going to be developers who are going to develop this land into something, some use that they already have in mind. They may already have a tenant lined up, or they might be an end user themselves. Being able to predict what they're going to need it for and getting that zoning is very difficult. So you might be better off just selling it as is. That way, an end user who's going to be paying top dollar for it can get whatever zoning they want to get, which might be completely different from the one you might get, and you're leaving it open. The drawback of that kind of deal is they may want to do the deal subject to their zoning approvals, and if they do, then it may take longer to close, but you'll find that you're going to get a better amount of money for it. Otherwise, you might go and get yourself some type of commercial zoning. For example, you may get it zoned for a multi-unit retail building, but then a self-storage facility might come through and say, no, we want to use it for self-storage. They're going to have to start that zoning process all over again, and the efforts that you put in, thousands of dollars you paid to get your zoning, is going to be essentially a waste. So just to leave your options open, the best chances of getting yourself top dollar are probably best to leave it as is. Next question is from Mark. I'm purchasing an occupied 8-family apartment building. The seller is selling as is and wants no responsibility for making any portion of the building vacant. Property needs a lot of work, so I intend to clear the property of all the tenants after I close. All the tenants are month to month, except one, which is a Section 8 tenant whose lease expires in 2 months. It shouldn't be too much trouble to get this vacant, right? Well, Mark, I'd say you're in for a hell of a trip here. getting an 8-family vacant, basically you're going to have to do 8 separate evictions. You're going to have varying degrees of difficulty with each of them. Some tenants might go willingly. If the tenants have been there for a while, it might take a little bit more. If the rents were below market, then you may find that some of these tenants, before they want to leave, they're going to want to find another place. And it might be difficult for them to find a place at a similar financial point, where they're paying in the rent, and that could drag things out a little. So the Section 8 tenant, that's going to be a beast in and of itself, because the Section 8 tenancies, they're governed not only by the regular local lease agreements, but also the federal HAP contracts, which is based on a set of federal regulations. They're not easily terminated. And not only that, but even if you are able to terminate it, it's not always easy for them to find an alternative place to live. And that's what often slows these evictions down a lot, is that the tenant has nowhere else to go. And so when faced with that, the choice is either be put out on the street or fight. They fight. And there's less units available that accept Section 8 vouchers. So the Section 8 tenant might take the longest to deal with. You can always offer cash for keys, which basically is just paying the tenants a certain amount of money in exchange for them just vacating the premises. I guess you're going to want to look at the whole setup of the place, how you're going to renovate it. If you need them all out before you can start the renovations, then you're going to want to also try to time it all, time your evictions, so that by the time they kind of conclude all at the same time. That way you can enjoy the rental income while you're waiting. So you might want to tackle that Section 8 tenancy first, because that's going to be the most difficult. And then when it looks like you have a time frame for that concluding and the Section 8 tenant getting out, then start in on the others. That might be the best way to go, but again, it's going to depend on the particulars of the building, the setup. Well, so I'm looking at the clock here. Looks like we went over a little bit. So just to wrap up, I want to reiterate that if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please get them to me using the contact information below or through my website at www.clarkslaws.com, and I'd be happy to consider it for a future presentation. If you have any feedback on how we can make this presentation better, feel free to use the comment section below or reach out to us directly. And if you like this presentation, then you can help keep it going by liking to show your support, or subscribing so that you'll be notified when new content is posted, and so that we can keep doing what we do and stand in service to you guys. So that's all we have for this time around. I'm Jim Clark. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.